For us, it just shows us how engaged people are in this event and the fact that they want to really know what's going on in the research, engage with researchers, and be more of an active participant in that whole world, which is really exciting.
I think it's truly the most important end to a conference like this, because ultimately, why are you here? It is because of the person who's been diagnosed with MS and lives with it somewhere in the world with a limited access to knowledge and data and research unless we go online.
This type of engagement between people living with MS and researchers and clinicians it's just probably one of the most important things we can do to make sure that we co-create research that really has an impact for the person living with MS.
You're listening to the ECTRIMS podcast, the official podcast channel of the European Committee for Treatment and Research in Multiple Sclerosis. ECTRIMS 2025 has just finished in Barcelona, Spain, with a critical event, Patient Community Day. With over 9,500 researchers having spent the past 4 days discussing groundbreaking advances into the understanding and clinical care of MS, NMOSD, MOGAD, and other rare neurological disorders, the Patient Community Day allows us to complete the circle, ensuring that these key highlights are translated to the people that are most impacted by them, people living with these neurological conditions. With a record attendance in person and online, Patient Community Day is a clear example that people living with neurological conditions are engaged in research and want to be included in these conversations. With more than 40 supporting partners from 17 countries across 5 continents, the message is clear. We are all united to improve the lives of people living with neurological conditions, and the only way to do this is to work together. Directly after the conclusion of Patient Community Day, I sat down with 2 people who have unique experiences on this event. Julie Petrin, a person living with MS who now works for MS Canada, and Non Helena Smit, the head of MS South Africa. Together, we discuss the importance of this event and the main messages to come out of these inspiring discussions. Julie, Non, thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
So, Non, I might start with you. MS South Africa, our first supporting partner of Patient Community Day from Africa. What does that mean, and what does it mean for people living with MS in South Africa?
First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity. It's great. It's a huge honor. People in South Africa are, as you could have seen from the registrations, they are super excited. They want to know what's happening in the world. The amount of information that they're already wanting to know, they're thirsty for the latest. People are proud that we are represented. And even the rest of my African colleagues are proud that we are almost like a gateway now, and that Africa is there and we could just go from here. It's wonderful. It's a great honor to be the first in Africa.
And Julie, coming from MS Canada, who have the privilege next year with MS Toronto, how do you feel about sort of being here and now looking forward to next year, what that's going to be like for Canadians living with MS to have this event in their own backyard?
Yeah, it's been great. I was sitting here with my colleague and we were kind of brainstorming how this would look in Toronto, and really looking forward to the opportunity to have the Canadian community come out and support the event, and also, to be honest, to have other perspectives. I know that there were people from all across the country, all across the world that came out today. You were saying someone from New Zealand flew quite some ways to come join us. So I think for us, it just shows us how engaged people are in this event and the fact that they want to really know what's going on in the research, engage with researchers, and be more of an active participant in that whole world, which is really exciting.
Yep. Beyond MS Canada, you come to an event like this with quite a unique perspective. We're wondering if you could share with us what that is and how it is for you with all of those different hats that you wear at an event like this, what it sort of means to you.
Yeah, it's sometimes difficult. I kind of have to shift the hat. So I was diagnosed with MS when I was 17, which kind of shifted my career trajectory, one might say. And I became an MS researcher. I did my whole master's and PhD and postdoc. And then I kind of focused on translating research. And because I really did want to have an impact within our community and work with people living with MS. And then a way to kind of do that was to work at MS Canada. So now I'm the Director of Impact and Evaluation. And so really I get to work with the community and see how our programs and how the research that everyone works together to fund and to essentially see what the real impact is on the community. So a lot of different hats. When I come to this event, I'm wearing all of them. So I'm trying to see what's new, what's happening, what's exciting in the research. But then I'm also trying to think, okay, well, how is that applicable? What does that mean to people living with MS like myself? I have the privilege of understanding all of these things. But when I come to the event and I hear people like Daniel Montanara that was speaking today, and he's so phenomenal at translating science in a way that makes sense to everyone, and that's just really, really great to see. And I'm so happy to see that people can understand the science.
And so, but I want to get into what some of your key takeaways were in a minute. But before that, what is the importance of an event like this? ECTRIMS is such a huge conference. We had a record number of registrations this year. More than 9,500 neurologists and healthcare professionals from around the world have come. So many sessions across so many days, across so many topics. How important do you think it is that we have Patient Community Day at the end of this conference so that those key messages can go back to the people that are the most impacted by them, which is people living with MS?
I think it's truly the most important end to a conference like this, because ultimately, why are you here? It is because of the person who's been diagnosed with MS and lives with it somewhere in the world with a limited access to knowledge and data and research unless we go online. In South Africa, we are not a research country. So it's the most important thing for people with MS to know that they are represented. And I'm speaking on behalf of them because I deal with them very closely. They want to know what it means to have PIRA and NIDA. They want to understand the diagnostic criteria. They want, and when we go back, we're going to talk to them about it and explain it in a simpler way. It has changed so much in recent years in terms of what the patient needs to know and also needs to share. And if they know the latest development, like what's happening at ECTRIMS, many of them thought, Non is just going to another conference. And then slowly but surely, we tell them it's the biggest conference in the world. And they start Googling and they start getting so excited. Because they really realize the amount of neurologists here. To me, it looked like a Bryan Adams concert. It's huge. And the impact of having such a lot of knowledgeable, experienced people talking the same language and even having that level of education, I think it's phenomenal. I don't think it's just exciting. The people at home are waiting to hear. We're going to tell them about it. It's an amazing event, all about people with MS, and we also have the mantra, nothing for the person with MS without the person with MS. It's impossible to decide for you what you need.
Julie, what about your thoughts on the importance of this event?
Well, I agree with everything that Non just said, and I would add that it's really about closing the loop, right? There's all of this work that's happening on behalf of people living with MS. And so having this at the end is really allowing people who are really affected by this hear what's going on and why why people are investing their careers into doing this. And I think the other important aspect of that is that some researchers in the lab don't get to see a person living with MS on a day-to-day basis. So having that interface between researchers and the people that they're actually working to help is really, really important. So this type of engagement between people living with MS and researchers and clinicians it's just probably one of the most important things we can do to make sure that we co-create research that really has an impact for the person living with MS, as opposed to just having them as our passive participants. So a lot of the people talked today about this idea of, co-creation. And I think that's one of the major, takeaways and important things that we need to think about as researchers, as clinicians, and as people living with MS, trying to be part of that whole research ecosystem.
Yep. One of the new additions we had at Patient Community Day 2025 with us was our People with Lived Experience panel. We had a number of people with these conditions talk about how they've been involved in research, how they've helped drive research forward. It was quite an inspiring session. Going back to South Africa, going back to Canada, how important are these messages in terms of continuing to mobilise people living with MS to really propel research forward by being engaged in what is happening?
I think it's a huge opportunity, and I think we started already a while ago by recording patient lived experience stories, not just what's happening to them now, but how it all started. To take that to another platform, another level would be absolutely amazing, because that's the way researchers can start thinking about things when they hear what's actually happened to the person with MS. So I'm excited. I'm very excited to be here. I feel like we've been heard, seen, acknowledged. The southern point of Africa, it's amazing. And thank you. Thank you for that. It's a really important event.
In terms of Canada, going back, getting people engaged, in terms of getting involved in research, driving research forward, what does that look like?
Yeah, so at MS Canada, we have a couple of different opportunities that already take place. We have a community representative program where we engage people to be part of all different types of opportunities. They review our grants. They're part of a bunch of different places where we're looking at finding people to give advice for specific researchers' work. There are other opportunities as well, but that they get pulled into from that representative community. Of course, there's always going to be more opportunities to engage by participating, but I think that there is, I will say, more work to be done on the side of the researchers who are doing their work, right? So I think it's thinking about having people with MS at the front end of that research so that co-creation can happen. And we can help do that as much as we can at MS Canada, but there really has to be some onus on the researchers and the clinicians and trying to get the word out as well in terms of, getting people engaged in that front end. We can have our advocates and our ambassadors talk about the opportunities and how great it is, but those opportunities do need to exist in research. So we still need to do some work on getting further ahead in that realm.
Yeah, definitely. Two last questions. Now it's at the end of a very long conference. If you were to try and drill down into one or two key messages that you heard in the sessions today about the research highlights from the conference that you're really going to take back and talk to people living with MS about, what would they be? What were your highlights that were discussed on the panels today?
Taking into account that South Africa is under-resourced in terms of diagnostics, we don't know who they are, we need to find them. I think the most inspiring message that I got was that in simplifying diagnostics, bringing diagnostic tools that is easily accessible will help us to actually find the people that we need to do the work that we do. And the networking around this entire conference to me was such a highlight, because meeting other patient organizations from other countries and finding out that even in European countries, they have the same challenges. It might just look a little different, but it's very much the same. And that was really good for me to experience and understand that we have a lot to share and learn from each other. And I think it was incredible to see the expertise of patient experts and clinicians under one roof. I think that was overwhelmingly exciting. That was great for me. I think it was a fantastic opportunity. I spoke to our neurologist who said, we're looking forward to exploring the new diagnostic criteria, and going back home, we need to make sure that we don't complicate things, but that we simplify it, and to educate those who need to know how to use it.
Julie, what about for you? What were your one or two highlights from the sessions today?
I think overall, one of the major takeaways for me is just the progress we've made in like the last even few years has been astronomical in terms of the new types of drugs and emerging therapies that are coming out, the concept of remyelination and the therapeutics involved that are coming out for remyelination. And I think we did see, yes, these are small changes that are happening, but like these are monumental in science, and like just having that first small positive result really is something that should ignite hope, because where we were 10, 15 years ago in the field is drastically different than where we are now. We have advanced so much in the field. So if we're seeing these positive results now, it's really hopeful to just think about where we'll be in the next 10 to 15 years. So that was kind of one of the big takeaways, is that these small positive results that are coming out in the BTKs and the CAR-T, in the remyelination, like all of this is really, really great and hopeful for the future. So that was kind of my big takeaway.
Yep. Well, Patient Community Day 2025 finished about 30 minutes ago. And so what that means is that planning for Patient Community Day 2026 at MS Toronto has already begun. For both of you, if you were to pick one topic that you would want to see discussed that you think are particularly important for people living with MS in your parts of the world, not an easy question, we've only just finished the other session, but if you had to pick one, what would you want to hear us discussing in 12 months' time?
I would want to hear more about remyelination. And what we discussed before we came here was last year's podcast talked about it, and people were very excited. And bringing this back, saying that there's work done, and going forward that you might even be, because it's so quick in changing, you might even be next year in Canada and hear most amazing stories about remyelination. It's not like, it's rapidly evolving, and I expect what we thought was going to happen in 5 years is going to happen in 1 year. So I hope that when Canada happens next year, that would be, because remyelination, in my mind, helps everybody. Even the one that's long diagnosed, the ones that are newly diagnosed. The cure helps those who have not been affected by disability. They're looking forward to it. But the rest of them say, it won't help for me, it's too late. So I think remyelination is the word and the technique and the research that many people are looking at. And it's not going to help only MS. I think it's going to help a lot of other fields as well, remyelination for me. I was glad that you mentioned it.
I think it's hard to choose a one specific topic that, could appeal to everyone living with MS. I think remyelination is a good one because it is something that could help the entire community. One of the things I was going to say, and to be honest, this happens a lot in a lot of these larger research areas. We don't spend a lot of time on lifestyle factors and what people can do to improve their well-being while we're waiting for cure, while we're waiting for treatments that might be more long-term. So as I was walking around today at the patient day, I noticed people had books on nutrition. People had brought books on exercise. And so I think that that's something that's actually quite top of mind. And even when people were talking about cognition, they talked about, like the researchers talked about, you need to live well and brain health and eat well and sleep well. But what does that mean? And how do people do that? I think that's something that's actually quite interesting to people who are trying to manage their lives day to day.
Well, 12 months away we can start to get excited about. But for now, Julie, Non, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts directly after Patient Community Day. It's been a long conference. We really appreciate your time to share that with us.
Thank you, and thank you for being here with me, Julie. It's really encouraging to have you on the side of me.
Thank you both for the conversation, and thanks for having me on, Brett.
Thanks everyone for listening. Once again, I'm Brett Drummond, host of this podcast episode and co-founder of MS Translate. The ECRMS podcast is produced and hosted in collaboration with two key partners: MS Translate, an independent resource centre that aims to simplify the complex wealth of information about MS for the greater MS community, and the MS Journal, a peer-reviewed international journal that focuses on MS, neuromyelitis optica, and other related autoimmune diseases of the central nervous system. The 2025-26 ECRMS podcast series is supported by educational grants from Alexion AstraZeneca Rare Diseases, Bristol Myers Squibb, Novartis, Roche, Sanofi, and UCB. Educational grant providers have no input in the podcast content. Do subscribe to the ECRMS podcast on all your favourite podcast channels, including Apple and Spotify. Visit the ECRMS website, ecrms.eu, to learn more about this topic and more, and join the conversations on X, LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube.